Okay, so get this picture. A huge RV,
Oh, boy.
plastered with Trump's face, parked right next to a polling place. I mean, come on. I know the comment section is going to be a
Look
total
up.
dumpster fire,
Oh,
right?
yeah. And that's what we're diving into today, how this one image spiraled into a whole debate about, like, electioneering, voter intimidation, even the role of the police got dragged into it.
It's kind of crazy how this image, right, just becomes this, like,
Oh.
lightning rod for all these anxieties people have about, like, is this even democracy anymore?
It's so true. And it all starts with this legal gray area, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you even park a campaign billboard on wheels that close to where people are voting?
No.
Some commenters were all about the legal jargon throwing around electioneering and quoting state laws. Yeah, and this is where it gets tricky.
Oh, I know. Right?
It's not as easy as just saying no campaigning within like 100 feet. Some states get super specific about what counts as campaigning.
Seriously.
Like, is it just talking to voters, or does just showing a candidate's name count as like campaigning?
Whoa.
And then you got to think about measuring that distance, right? Like, is it from the curb, the property line, the door?
Oh, my gosh. I never even...
It's all over the place.
I know.
And that just makes it so hard to actually, like, enforce anything.
So basically figuring out if that RV is actually breaking the law would take, like, a tape measure and a law degree.
Pretty much.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Even if it's technically illegal, does that make it okay? A lot of people in the comments were way less worried about what the law says and more worried about, like, is this going to scare people away from voting?
Yeah. And that's the big one, right? Voter intimidation.
Huge.
Because for a lot of people, especially folks from marginalized communities who, let's face it, have already had to deal with so much just to vote.
That's true.
For them, just seeing this huge, in-your-face political statement right there as they're trying to vote, it can be really intimidating.
Absolutely.
Like, are they being watched? Are they going to be safe? It can mess with your whole sense of, like, can I even be here right now?
And we saw that fear in the comments straight up.
Oh, yeah.
People saying things like, imagine being, like, a first-time voter, maybe from a community that's already faced voter suppression.
Right.
And then you see that parked outside. Like, come on.
Exactly. It just brings up all this baggage, like, is this another way to target and silence certain voters?
And this is where that whole both sides do it argument just exploded.
Oh, here we go.
Right. You had people saying, lighten up, it's just free speech, expressing his opinion. But then others were like, this is not just a bumper sticker. This is something else.
It's a good point.
Right.
Like, saying both sides do it just ignores the fact that not everyone starts on a level playing field when it comes to voting.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Historically, certain groups have had to fight tooth and nail just to have their vote counted.
It's true.
So, yeah, what might seem harmless to one person could be a really big deal to someone else, especially if they're coming from a place where those rights were constantly under attack.
It's all about context, I guess.
Exactly. And you know what's wild? Even if we, like, forget about all that history for a second.
Yeah.
This image still hits a nerve,
Oh, absolutely.
It's like the RV became this symbol, right?
Totally.
For all that pent-up frustration with, like, how divided everything feels.
Yes. Like, the polarization is just off the chart.
Exactly. And the misinformation. Don't even get me started.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like everyone feels like the rules are rigged or something.
Right. It's not just about one RV anymore. It's about this feeling that these crazy over-the-top tactics...
Which, let's be real, they're designed to go viral.
Oh, absolutely. They're meant to get a reaction, create controversy.
It's all about the clicks, right? Headlines, outrage, that's the currency now.
Exactly. And some people in the comments were calling that out, saying this is just like a PR stunt.
Which makes you wonder, does it even work? Like, is anyone actually changing their vote because they saw an RV?
That's the million-dollar question.
Seriously.
It kind of makes you think about how we even get our information these days,
Because it's not like the old days.
Not at all. Everyone's in their own little bubble online.
Totally. Echo chambers everywhere.
Exactly. So this RV, it might not be about convincing someone who's on the fence.
It's more about firing at the people who are already on board.
Right. Riling up the base, confirming what they already believe.
It's us versus them all over again.
And that's where the misinformation comes in.
Ugh, don't get me started.
Because if you're already looking for reasons to distrust the other side...
Which, let's be real, a lot of people are.
Seeing that RV, it just feeds into those existing fears.
Even if it's not even true.
Right. It's like It confirms your worst suspicions, whether they're based in reality or not.
And we saw that in the comments, too. People were sharing all these
Oh,
stories.
yeah, I saw those.
Like, I saw someone trying to intimidate voters with a candidate name sign. But were they really, though? Exactly. No evidence, just vibes.
It just shows you how hard it is to tell what's real anymore.
Especially when something just slots in perfectly with what you already believe.
Exactly. It's like, see, I knew it.
Whether you love Trump or hate him, that image just worked for people.
That's what's so fascinating. Right?
Totally. It's like a case study in how we decide what to believe.
How we get manipulated, even.
Okay, but can we talk about the RV itself for a sec?
Oh, yeah, please.
Because some people are losing their minds over how it looked.
It was a lot, wasn't it?
Like, people were giving full-on graphic design critiques in the comments.
I saw those. Tacky, gaudy, an assault on good taste. They did not hold back.
It was brutal. Which, I mean, it makes you think.
Right.
Like, we make judgments about everything based on how it looks.
Oh, totally. First impressions are everything.
Imagine if that RV was, like, all sleek and modern.
Right, like minimalist.
Yeah. Would it have caused the same uproar?
Probably not. It's all about the branding.
So maybe it's not just about the message, it's about how you package it.
Exactly. Those aesthetic choices, they matter.
They can be just as polarizing as anything else.
And speaking of polarization, we can't forget about the whole law enforcement angle.
Oh, right. Because even if the RV wasn't breaking any rule.
Which who even knows at this point?
Exactly. There's still the question of, like, would anyone even do anything? Yeah.
And would it be different if it was a different candidate?
Ooh, good point. There's a lot to unpack there.
Because we saw that distrust playing out in the comments, big time.
Oh, yeah. People were not holding back.
Some were like, tow that thing right now.
And others were like, yeah, right. Like they'd ever do that.
It's that feeling of like, what's the point?
Like, even if you report it, nothing's going to happen.
Which gets at something really deep, you know?
Totally. Like, do we even trust the people in charge to play fair?
That's what's at stake here.
Because if you don't trust the system,
then what?
Then people start taking matters into their own hands.
And that's where things get dangerous.
We saw hints of that in the comments, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
People talking about showing up with their own messages, counter-protesting.
Right, right.
But then some went even further, you know?
Like suggesting they might have to, you know...
Get a little more hands-on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's scary.
Big time. Because it shows how desperate people feel.
Like they have to resort to extreme measures just to be heard.
Or to protect what they believe in.
And that's not what democracy is supposed to be about.
It's like, at what point does it cross the line? Right.
And that's the thing about these online spaces. They can be breeding grounds for misinformation, especially when emotions are running high.
Because if you're already feeling like the system's broken...
And nobody's listening to you...
Right.
You're going to be more likely to believe anything that confirms your worldview, even if it's not true.
And we saw that firsthand in the comments.
Oh, for sure.
People were linking to all sorts of stuff.
Anything to prove their point.
Blogs, social media posts, even memes. Like, come on, people.
And half the time there's no context, no fact-checking, nothing.
It's just, here's a headline, believe it.
Which is why, more than ever, we got to be careful about what we consume online.
Totally. Critical thinking skills are basically a superpower now.
For real, you got to be able to spot the BS, especially when it comes to something as important as our elections.
No doubt. So, big picture, we've got this RV, this photo, and it's basically turned into this giant Rorschach test.
It's showing us all the cracks in our society, all the things we're too afraid to talk about.
The distrust, the misinformation, the anger, it's all there.
And that's the real story here, isn't it? It's not just about one RV or one election.
It's about what this whole thing says about us.
Exactly. And one comment really stuck with me. It said, "We're so busy arguing about the symptoms that we're forgetting to treat the disease."
Oof, that's deep.
Right. Like, how do we move past the shouting matches and actually address the root problems?
How do we start trusting each other again? How do we make sure everyone feels heard?
Those are the questions we need to be asking.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you vote for if the whole system falls apart.
Well said. We got to find a way to disagree without being disagreeable.
To have those tough conversations without resorting to, parking a giant billboard outside someone's polling place.
Exactly. We need to be better than that.
And I think deep down, we all know that.
I hope so.
So let's take a deep breath, step away from the keyboard.
And maybe go for a walk.
Yeah, get some fresh air, clear our heads.
Because we've got some work to do.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.